Hey there, Next Gen Millionaires. It's Joe Burns back this week with another interesting conversation. I find it very interesting. I hope you do too. Again, my name is Joe Burns. For those who don't know me, I am the money master. I help people really unlock the answers they already know inside them about their money and their money mindset, and just help them unlock it and find new perspectives and ways to look at how money affects their lives emotionally. To break that down a little simpler, I really talk about the money EQ. This is the money IQ. Emotionally, how does money make us feel? Instead of, budgets, investments, things like that. So this week, holy cow, like if you watched my video last week, go back and watch. I talked about an article that was given by a friend that talked about home lending practices with the Native American groups, right? And the discrimination and racism that happens in that arena. Well, lo and behold, this week, guess what also ran through as I watched the news and watched social media and stuff. There was an article that the Department of Justice in the United States is looking into FHA lending practices as it concerns the Black community. Because let's just be honest, like when we look at it overall in America, there's huge amounts of racism, systemic racism when it comes to different communities, right? And communities of color particularly, right? So like right there, you can find so many, like if I got to point it out to you, like you're not looking at all because there are so many cases, but I want to talk about this one case in particular because it really shines a light on the issues that we're dealing with when it comes to systemic racism in America. And this happens to fall in the money realm. So that's why I picked it up and I'm like, hey, let's talk about this. Because what are we thinking, right? Again, I want to go back to what are we thinking? What are we feeling? How are we approaching this conversation in a way that we can start to make change in how we're interacting with other people, okay? Overall. And the white people, I'm specifically talking to you because we've been raised a lot of different ways and it's harming the communities of color. It really is, right? It's our job because we have the power to make these changes, okay? So I just want to set the ground rules right there. Like we have the power to make the changes. So let's do that. We got to start solving the shit on the inside of us first, right? This internal discomfort with having this conversation, with even talking about racism in America. I mean, I know a lot of you already have issues even talking about money or politics or some of these other things. So I'm just going to we're going all in on a really difficult subject of one hand money, right? And how we emotionally feel, but the other hand, how that is affecting the systemic racism, right? With and perceptions of people in America, because it's a problem. So I ran across this article. Let's talk about the article real quick. And I'll post the link to one of the articles, right? It was covered by many news outlets. But the first one I read that I saw, and then you can Google if you want other perspectives, but honestly, this stuff's happening and it's a problem. Okay. So here's the article and I want to break down, just some things we can do a little differently. Okay. A different perspective of how we can approach this in a way that we can be people, who are helping create a better solution to the real ingrained problem. Okay. So the article is a Black couple in California who had their home appraised. They spent thousands of dollars renovating their homes to get it appraised, right? Like any family would want to do, hey, we're going to make improvements to the house. We're going to come in and get it appraised so we can refinance it, or sell it, whatever is going to happen, right? And so they had the appraisal come. They got a hold of the person, shows up, appraises the house, right? And it comes in at like $900,000, $950,000, something like that, right? And then they get a little bit of sticker shock for them because they're like, with what we're at, where we're at, home prices, where they're all at, like all these things, it should be appraising for much more than that. So they're a bit disheartened in the results. So they're like, well, what happens if we change a few things, right? And they got smart. And right, this isn't the only story I've read about this, right? And this is the particular one I want to show because I have the link to it. I've heard this over and over and over, and it's very problematic where Black couple gets their house appraised, it appraises for much lower. And then what happens is they'll remove traces of like cultural traces, right? So you can't tell what race of people own the home, and then the outcome's different. So what they did was they removed the cultural references they had, any pictures of themselves. They really whitewashed their home, right? Which is really sad that they had to go through these efforts when they had it done, but they got it reappraised. They had a white friend show up, and under the pretense of like that this white friend owned the home, right? And again, cleaned out all the references they had just so that they could see if they would get a fair market value appraisal for their home. Okay. Now, when the appraisal came back, doing these two things, right? Just these two things. When the appraisal came back, it appraised for $1.4 million. Now, for anybody who's going to be jumping on me being like, but Joe, appraisals are all subjective and blah, 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 right? All these things. Yes, I understand. If it had come back within the range, I would agree. Yeah, just different tastes of appraisals and difference in opinion. Because let's be honest, the house appraisal process is kind of opinion. They use some facts, but we've all had it done, those who've owned homes, and it's not a real science. Like, we've gotten all kinds of different things back. But let's be honest with the real thing here. It came back $500,000 higher. That's not a mistake. That's racism. Okay? Like, just think about that for a minute. That's not like, again, it's not a mistake. So we got to look at this. And this happens all the time. And a lot of white people will try to discount it, being like, oh, there's probably blah, 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 lots of reasons. No, like, let's just call it what it is. Again, you don't make as an appraisal a $500,000 mistake. You just don't. And especially under some circumstances, when you look at it, it's hard to not call it what it is. So let's bring this internally, right? Because that's the problem I'm presenting to you, right? The problem is we have like real blatant racism happening here, right? In this process. And that's the stuff that's got to stop. Our own white bias towards what's happening. Now, internally, when I look at it from a money mastery perspective, the question is, where else are we doing this in our lives, right? This is could be an extreme example, but it's not so extreme and it happens a lot. So I'm not going to call it like it's outside the box much. But if we look at our own lives, how does who we interact with show up in the way we think about that person? I remember growing up a lot, and I heard about a lot of different racist comments and things, about people working and what they're able to afford. And I look back at that and I'm like, wow, I'm appalled. Because when it comes to money, we have such a perspective of the narrative that we've been handed down through history. Okay? And if you want to know about the Black communities and finance, there's a book called Color of Money, and I forget who it's by, but go look it up. Like that breaks down the whole financial industry, right? And how it's systemically racist from the beginning, right? But we look at that, and those bias and those racist undertones continue to exist within our systems today. So when we look at our own bias, right, when we look at our own problems when it comes to what we think about finances and money and opportunities within what we can have and what we can't have, we have to start looking in the mirror, because it all starts with us. What do we believe? Because guess what? It's probably wrong. We have to start challenging what's going on inside of us. We can't just say, oh, it's out there for somebody else. I'm not racist, or I don't have racist tendencies. And if you're white, that there's no fragility here, because there's lots of proof that says there is. And when these things start coming up in the news, it always catches my attention, because these are the things we have to stop doing. We have to start changing the internal programming on ourselves before we're going to start seeing change on the outside. Because if not, then it just perpetuates over and over and over and over. And we never get to changed systems. We never get to the point where it's not happening anymore because we're not willing to step up for ourselves and make that change. The world of money and the world of how we think about it is complex enough already. And then we're adding racism and bias and trauma on top of all of that. And we just hand that down to the next generation and said, here's what I dealt with. This is how I did it. And just go make your own of it. We have to stop this now with us. It's going to take work, right? This is not easy stuff to change. We have to take the time. We have to be aware enough. We have to accept that this is a problem for ourselves and not keep pushing it off on somebody else and saying, hey, it's somebody else's problem. Because it's not, it's our problem. We have to solve this solution now. We have to start changing the way we think. We have to start changing the way we act, what we say. And guess what? We're going to get it wrong. And that's okay. At least we're trying. Because up until now, not very many people try. And the white community says, well, it's not our problem, right? It's our ancestors' problem. So why am I at fault? Because you can do something about it now. That's why it's your problem to solve. It's not your fault you didn't do it, but you continue to do it, right? But it is a problem we need to solve as a white community now for the communities of color, for our friends of color. Because if we have the advantage because of our white skin, then we have to play that card and say, hey, guess what? This is not right. It's got to stop here. In our interactions with the world and with businesses, we got to really challenge ourselves to start thinking differently. Because until you do, you're going to continue to have the same money problems you had always. You're going to continue to push those money problems off on other people, thinking it's the outside world. I don't have the opportunities. I don't have enough clients. I don't have enough money coming in. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. Right? You do have enough. You're just not seeing how abundant this world is. And you're not paying attention to where the systems are actually broken. And the communities and individuals in this community are struggling to fight against that system because it's really taking advantage of them every single day. So we got to stop. And that's what it's got to stop with us. It's got to stop now. Because when it does, then people start having the same opportunities. Like this black family in California, they start having the same opportunity to get the value out of their home, right? There's not bias and racism towards them on one side to be like, well, because you're a black family, you only get 900,000. But if you're a white person, you get 1.4 million, right? Because that's totally fair. It's so unbalanced. Do you see that? So unbalanced. So it's got to start internally. We got to start challenging how we think about money, how we think about opportunities, how we think about what other people have. Because at the end of the day, it's not up to you to decide. It's only up to you to decide what you get for yourself. And it doesn't mean if you get it, somebody else can't have it. We got to throw that logic out the window. We live in a very abundant world. There's lots of resources for everybody. So we got to start living that way. If we don't, then you're not going to get to where you want to go. You're going to continue to be part of the problem, not part of the solution. So I hope that all of you are part of the solution, that you want to make changes, you want to do something different. Because when we all band together with people who want to make a difference, then real change will start to happen. So this week, go out there and see, how are you helping to contribute to this problem? What are you doing that is showing racial bias towards decisions you're making, or who you do business with, or how you treat other people? And it's time to stop. Call yourself out on it. Be like, hey, look, I did this. I'm not proud of it. And guess what? I'm not going to do it again. Because when you can start making that kind of change in your life, you're going to start to see all kinds of other change happening in other areas, including in your financial life. Money likes joy. Money likes when we're aligned and we're doing what we want to be doing. And we're treating other human beings as human beings. Right? It enjoys that. And as we do that, we'll find more opportunities. We'll find ways to help other people and help elevate them as well. Right? And use the opportunities that we have in a way to make real change, not just change, but real change in the world that future generations can continue to live by and start to shape. So I hope you're in it with me on this. I hope you can see where you're at in this journey of yours and know that it all comes down to like what we think and hear and what we believe in our hearts. So it's time to make those changes. Thanks for watching today. I hope you subscribe if you want more of these conversations from me. Ask any questions. I'm always open for questions. And until next week, we'll see you later. Bye.